So a late apology from Jill from PepsiCo. There was a soft drink emergency, so she is unable to join us today, but she'll join us next time. She sends her apologies. But we have three fabulous marketers with us who hopefully are part of the 31% who have more budget to spend on everything. We might find that out. So we will go through and find out a little bit about each marketer. I'd love you to explain, I guess, what you, beyond your title, which we can all see, what your job entails and what your favourite video ad is, preferably one from the olden days and one current, though extra points if your favourite one is a current one, because often we reflect with nostalgia on the older ones. So, Louisa, welcome. Okay, everyone. Yeah, sorry, could everyone just... that one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. All right. Have I got it?
Coming.
Yep.
Got it.
So I'm the brand media lead at Uber, covering both Uber Eats and Uber Rides, looking after Australia, New Zealand and Taiwan. My favourite video ad recently, I think, has to be the Tubi Super Bowl ad.
Yep.
Just loved how it caught everyone off guard. Loved the videos of all the reactions of people jumping off their couches, yelling at their family for changing the channel. And
Just hands up who's seen that. We might put links to all these afterwards. Okay.
it's a good one. You should look it up.
Yeah.
An old one has to be the old Qantas I Still Call Australia home ad. I just love it. I think every time it came on, I was hoping it was the full version, not the shorter version. And I think any ad that can make you want to watch the longer one is a great one.
Fantastic. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. So my name's Chris Dutton. I'm recently joined media lead and ad tech lead at Yui up on the Sunshine Coast. And I guess I'll probably cheat and go with two kind of like award-winning ads, starting with the old one, probably because I think I'm probably in a strange category where my dad was in the insurance industry way back when, and in the entertainment industry used to go away to these global TV advertising awards and come back with this VHS cassette that was hours long, and my brother and I would just like watch all these ads all the time. It's because back then you had like directors like Tony Kaye who like of American History X who were doing like Dunlop ads and stuff like that. So back then you were kind of pulling this one lever, which was creativity, and really hooking people. So yeah, PVRs were never a thing in our household. We loved TV ads, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I think that got me into sort of in-house, being an in-house runner for a film production company. And at that same time, there was these Guinness ads, and there was a particular one called Surfer. I'm not sure if everyone remembers it. It's basically a bunch of surfers going out. There's these crashing waves. These waves turn into horses, and eventually they all crash out apart from this one guy who arrives on the beach, and everybody celebrates it. And it was just like a really nice visual based on this painting, I think from like Neptune's horse or something. And then the soundtrack was like my favorite band at the time, Neptune, and it was a really compelling story because it was like taking from Moby Dick, and I just thought it was really, they were kind of like wowing people back in the day. So that's my kind of golden oldie, if you will. Yeah. But for the newer one, I don't think we're any less creative. In fact, I'd argue that we're more creative these days because we have to do things across a fragmented audience, across multiple channels, fragmented landscape. And for that reason, I kind of think the Come Say G'day campaign was really good from Tourism Australia. I know that's already been well recognized, but I just thought the fact that it is effectively a 9-minute short movie, which is supported by these 60, 50, 30-second ads, which act as these mini movie trailers act as like a really good example, provided you got massive lead time and loads of budget, on how you're going to do something that compelling across so many different assets. So you've got this brand, consistent brand story across multiple platforms. It's authentic, and it essentially was well researched, as you can tell, like reaching 15 different markets, culturally different markets is no easy thing, and that's probably why they used those characters. And yeah, that made it very memorable and unique, and I think that's really important for video campaigns these days.
And were you always going to come back to insurance? Was that like
and
an emotional calling?
The weirdest thing is that like my dad had his own insurance company in South Africa for 13 years, and Youi is predominantly owned by a company called Outsurance in South Africa, which is and they've been in existence for about 15 years, so it's just all come kind of weirdly
Destiny.
full circle. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Susan, was it in your blood as well, advertising?
It was, but nothing like the story that you've just said. I'm going to cheat as well. I feel like anybody who was here last year might remember this example, but there are a couple of advertisers that have done this. Mercedes-Benz used a 6-second bumper to demonstrate that they can go from 0 to 100 in 3.5 seconds or something. So I think that's really an effective use of, a creative agency or whoever understanding the, uniqueness of the 6-second and then, a product benefit that's integrated into the bumper. And I think your example last year was a car could reverse park in under 6 seconds. So amazing example there. But more recently, and it's in the market, so maybe I get bonus points for it currently being in the market, but it's the Children's Cancer Institute, and it's Donate Your Age. So you might have seen it. It's very impactful because, for a number of reasons. For one, charities have donor fatigue. We all sort of donate, but then people get very fatigued by it. So by donating your age, I think, they understand that, for younger people, it's a lesser amount that you need to donate. And by taking your age, it's very relevant to you as well. So when you watch like the video as well that accompanies it, it's very emotional. It's storytelling at the heart of it. So it's a great creative, sort of platform. But the video as well is just it's a story that you just want to watch. It's a cause close to my heart. But that would be my favourite.
Fantastic. And we might stick with you, Susan. So closer to home, your video strategy at the moment, and I understand there's a myriad of different options and, there. What's sort of your current work and strategy, both internally and with your agency?
Well, a lot of our creative actually comes from global, so we are limited in what we can do with it. We can work with publishers to create sort of and localize content, which there are publishers in the room that might have done that, so we can make it relevant to our local audience. But I mean, we have a certain amount of sort of product sequencing that we always look to put into our advertising. And when I say product sequencing, a lot of our products, like Ferrero Rocher, you want to see sort of, what's inside the Ferrero Rocher. So, game changer, it's Nutella. If nobody knew that, it actually is in most of our products. Every product, in fact, except almost Tic Tac. So, no, we don't put Nutella in Tic Tacs. But when we have a product like Tronky, for instance, we launched Tronky recently. And it's a wafer biscuit, but we need to show people what's inside it. So that's where we use video to really, demonstrate almost product sequencing shots because, we all like to, eat with our eyes. When we go to restaurants, that's why, plates appear that look amazing. So it's the same with our video. It's very much a video-led strategy, to showcase that product and, show what it looks like inside.
And are you using a broad range of video options, long, short,
Yeah, we do. We use, a lot of, if the brand's well established, and we might use skippable formats. If we're looking at a forced view, we'll use non-skips, bumpers. So, yeah, we use a different sort of array of, we're using more BVOD naturally because we've been a very heavy TV advertiser over the years, and Ferrero are an Italian company. They can be quite conservative, in their approach. So it's sort of, I guess, working to prove the reach that we can obtain. From doing a digital-only strategy versus TV. We've seen TV drop by 30%, in some cases. So, we've had to look at how we can, look at with digital to bring that reach back up, and particularly BVOD as well, in that space. But I think the challenge for us is and you touched upon this before, that we have one creative and we run it across everything. So, our TVC, will just run across YouTube, and, then it might slightly change for, Meta, but it's just understanding that different platforms have different behaviours, So I was listening to a Pinterest webinar a couple of weeks ago, it's quite interesting because the scrolling behaviour on that platform, I think they said, is 30% slower, and people like seeing advertising on Pinterest. So we need to localise the creative for Pinterest and understand what their audience is and what they're seeking versus just taking our TVC and blasting it on everything.
Fantastic. Chris, what's your video strategy at the moment?
Yeah, sorry. So we've traditionally been, I think, say, traditional broadcast television advertisers, and I think, but that's not to say we don't. We also get on the front foot in terms of trialing new channels, publishers, ad formats, that sort of thing. And a good example of that was we're one of the first partners with Binge in Australia as well, giving us access to sort of premium content. But I think, to Susan's point, we actually have a role to play across the funnel. Angela Greenwood, our CMO who came in 12 months ago, recently said, we have to have we have to get into the consideration set more, do more in the mid funnel, and that means kind of pull that story down through long and short form video ad formats from top to bottom. So that means do the premium ad content, in-stream video on YouTube, etc. I think earlier before we were just talking about how video is playing a bigger role bottom of funnel. That's certainly as an insurance company full of actuarialists. Every channel gets looked at through a critical lens of performance, and so we have a job to do in terms of educating on the role of comms that gets played by all channels, not just video. So it's not just a performance metric, but we're certainly well on that journey internally. And for us, it's really about how do you pull through that story from awareness through to consideration. That also supports the performance channels as well. So we do have a large blend. To Susan's point again, we can't be everywhere doing everything, so we have to be quite, selective at times in terms of what we're testing and trialing. So if we adopt this sort of 70-20-10 type of innovation framework, what becomes our bread and butter, what in the innovation section turns into our bread and butter through test and trials. And I think, there's a lot that we're doing in that space at the minute, but we're at the beginning of our journey in many ways. And we also, I should add, we've been through a bit of a reorganization of the team, and I think UE is typically known as an in-house sort of company, which has moved into this sort of, it's still very much in-house, but moving more into leaning on the right partnerships where possible. I think the popular terms like right housing or something, but yeah, that means that we've aligned with creative partners to support us to be able to get these creative formats out at speed in a localized manner if we need to, and also just be able to get more of these variations out, because as Susan said, there's so many different requirements from different publishers that if you do want to kind of almost spread yourself thinly, you have to really think about where you're placing your chips.
Fantastic. Louisa, what's going on at Uber?
So I think like a lot of brands and a lot of advertisers, we've in the last few years moved over to a screens approach versus a pure TV approach, and with that, sort of BVOD and online video are becoming a much more important part of our media mix. On the Uber Eats side, on both sides actually, our team plays primarily in the top half of the funnel, and so driving awareness and consideration are kind of the key objectives for us, and especially on the Uber Eats side, where we're sort of have just started our journey of changing the perceptions of audiences of Uber Eats from just being your Friday night takeaway to being able to get groceries and alcohol and all sorts of other things on the platform. Channels and formats that can help us drive that salience are really, really important to us in our media mix. So looking at channels that enable us to run sort of longer format video non-skippable if possible, are really high up there in the consideration set. And then sort of on the Uber ride side, where we're looking at launching and driving product awareness of different sort of Uber rides products like Reserve or Car Share. Again, like a lot of longer format and short format video to really drive that comprehension of what those products are.
Yeah, okay, that's great. You've all talked about creative a bit, and I think I've said on stage here, I'll retire when one of our surveys talks about everyone doing fit for purpose creative, so I think I'm safe in my job for a little bit longer. I know we make it harder for you as an industry because we keep bringing in new formats. How do you, and you've all talked about the need for that tailoring of content, but what does that trade off of, you know, investment versus return, and how do you, are you getting close to be able to measure when that investment is worthwhile? Louisa, do you want to start with that one?
I think for us, it kind of starts at to me, it should start at the briefing stage before we even look at our media mix. If we know our audience bullseye, then our creative should talk to that audience bullseye, and doesn't matter where that audience is seeing our creative, it should speak to them. I think when we look at sort of contextualizing creative for different platforms and different formats, like you said, it is a massive debate internally about the balance of the cost of the creative cost of creating multiple different versions, and then the upside of the impact from having contextualized creative in that format. And I don't think we've figured out what that balance is and if it's worth it in every single setting.
So
yeah. I would agree with that. We're doing a we might use addressability, and we might have like a play where it might be branding, where we can reuse the creative if we're doing sort of addressability based on certain passion points and signals, etc. But if we're doing a promotion or something and we're creating 48 pieces for a promotion that's a one-off, then the addressability side of it is like, how much are we paying for the creative versus the efficiency of it, and we can't use the creative again, so what's the purpose for it?
Sorry, I was just to add to that as well. I think, like I mentioned, that we brought in a partner to help us execute at speed as well. But there's also these platforms that are kind of industrializing this process somewhat as well. And I won't kind of go out and name them, but you've essentially helped with the automation side of things, which help to reduce cost efficiencies. Before joining UE, I was doing a contract role where I went out and kind of surveyed a bunch of the leading marketers in Australia, and it was really around dynamic creative optimization was the project that we thought we had in mind, but what it turned out to be in reality was DCO was something that actually people sounded scary and expensive, and the use cases were primarily collaboration and speed to market. Those are the things that people want out of their creative solution. And so essentially, what you've got through research, and what I've seen people use is a lot of creative automation platforms that allow people to get multiple assets out at speed, which they haven't had access to before. And instead of talking about many dollars, you're talking about cents in the future. And yeah, I know everybody talks about AI these days, but there's always the industrialization or automation aspect of things as well, which make some of these barriers a little bit easier when we talk about trying to be everywhere and do everything. I agree with both of the comments here. It's also like a bottom-up planning approach. What has worked before really well? Where do we see the trends, and where do we want to play next? And then where can we afford to do so with some of these tools that are coming along as well?
Okay, and you mentioned AI there. So, do you just see that as a natural progression when you're talking about these tools, that AI will be sort of integrated more into all the automation tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI features in every single conversation or panel these days, but quite rightly so. It's not a fad. It's something that's here to stay, and I just think it's a way in which we adopt it or prioritize it. So, I mean, if I think about those creative automation platforms I just talked about, in theory, what you might be able to do is, get them to do the multiple assets, do them really cheaply, and then overlay the AI to say, right, well then, create me multiple variations, one for each state, give me the perfect mix. And I know this isn't is very easily said because you've got approvals, you've got regulations internally. But if all those things came from a pre-approved asset library or a DAM or something like that, there's no reason that this couldn't happen in the future, or to say which image should appear where in the video first and all that sort of thing, provided you give it best practice guidelines and you let it know about your audience. It's a scary sounding thing, but I think ultimately it's about how people use those platforms to help improve the company's
That's
performance.
what we've all been aiming for, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Susan, are you jumping on the AI creative bandwagon?
Well, our organisation is a little bit slow in regards to jumping on the AI bandwagon for creative. I think it definitely, we've got a lot of brand guidelines, and so if to your point, Chris, if you give it a lot of rules and things like that to work with, then definitely I can see it being a core component. I think we've talked about this. For us also, we're not allowed to feature children in our ads without an adult because it's part of the Responsible Children Marketing Code. So we signed up to the EU pledge along with many other FMCG advertisers, and we can't advertise to under, I think it's more than 25% of under the audience 15. So we've got very strict guidelines, being a chocolate company, of course. So I think, to that point, it's sort of, when we're looking at featuring AI and creative, if we give it those, strict guidelines that we have to adhere to of not featuring a child solo in an advertisement without, then by all means, yeah, but we're not quite there yet. Long journey for us.
What about Uber?
No, not yet. Look, I'm personally really excited about what it could do for some of our lower funnel stuff. So, like Chris talked about, sort of looking at more efficient ways of producing multiple versions of creative and testing and all of that sort of stuff. But a lot of what we do in the upper funnel relies on the nuances of emotion and humour and empathy and storytelling, and I just don't think that AI is there yet. I think it'll be scary when it is. But I don't think it's ready at this stage for us to really lean in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if anybody went to the Beck concert, but I went to the Beck concert recently, and he put his song Loser in a chat GTP, and he then sort of did perform the song, and he was explaining how it sounded like, I don't know, like Bon Jovi, and it did. So it's sort of, there's still a lot I think in terms of how it can needs to be used, and it's getting there.
Yeah, I've definitely. Some of the versions you see come out like on LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff, they're comical in terms of the way they look and actually almost scary sometimes the way they look. But at the same time, it's a $1 trillion industry that everybody's trying to get ahead of everybody else in. And I saw that, like many others would have seen, like last week, WPP announced their sort of NVIDIA partnership around AI and what they're doing in this space. So I think people are trying to figure out ways in which this will ultimately improve internal processes and how we get all of this creative out in a really relevant, timely manner. That's different to everybody else, but I just wonder how that is going to differentiate when we're all using the same sort of algorithms and the same sort of platforms.
We will see. Okay, you've got a room that's got quite a lot of partners, publishers, tech, agencies there. Based on your own marketing objectives, if over the next year, if you could change or improve one thing around the digital video ecosystem, what would it be? Pick one thing, and we'll go and fix it for you. Louisa, do you want to start?
Oh, I have.
You've got a list.
I've not. I have two things, but I think one thing is just measurement is like everything, and I think publishers and publishers that will partner with us on measurement and help us create a learning agenda for the work that we're doing is really paramount.
Can we drill into that? Because measurement can mean a lot of things.
Yes.
So what were you talking about? Understanding reach, business objectives? Yes, all of it.
So We love a brand lift study at Uber. So brand lift is just help me understand what my campaign is doing in terms of our key sort of brand lift objectives. But some of the newer, I guess, channels, I think looking at delivery and things like reach and that sort of thing are still kind of BAU things that we need to be looking at. But for the more established channels, like measurement and helping us understand how we can continue to optimise the way we're buying, the creative we're putting in, how we're driving brand lift is the number one thing.
Okay. All right, we're on it. Chris?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the measurement. I think particularly like with memorability type metrics and scores and things like that, as I mentioned, we're very much concentrating on getting the consideration set. And so I know like attention scores and attention metrics are very much trending, and I see those more or less as kind of upper funnel, but more mid funnel would be kind of like, memorability type metrics and how you combine the different metrics with that, with heat map studies and all the rest of it, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. But given I've got mostly like a data-driven marketing sort of background, it's also about how do we take our first-party data and really use that with some of these publishers, because we hear a lot about the rise of the third wave of media, retail media, and that's powered a lot by data clean rooms or data collaboration platforms as they're kind of morphing into now. And so I just don't know how ready a lot of these platforms and publishers are to ingest or overlay or enrich our first-party data with theirs for better targeting. So I think I'm just working my way through that.
Okay, great. Susan?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Another thing I think is audiences. I think publishers, understand their audiences mostly pretty well, but you have things like TikTok were fined recently in the UK £12.7 million or something because they were taking children under 13 their data and misusing it. So for me, from a brand safety point of view, it's understanding who is using the platform, so audience as well, but definitely the measurement piece and to your point, like data and first party and how we can prepare. For us, that's a real a challenge because we don't own any first party data. We go through Coles and Woolworths. It's very difficult to get that transactional data. We can look at IRI data, but we need to really start preparing that. So yeah.
All right. Time for Slido questions. So if anyone wants to pop a question in, I'll pick a couple of good ones. I might start with one, and it's following on that measurement piece, but it's really drilling you down. Louisa, you've probably already answered this one, but I guess what's that key metric that you really struggle to get? So for you, it's brand lift in an easy way.
Consideration.
And Chris, for you, it's that memorability. So it's
it's memorability, but as I said as well, like in the business, lots of activity gets viewed through the lens of performance as well. So things like cost per view and that sort of thing are rightly or wrongly looked at quite heavily at the minute as well. So I'm trying to rethink that in terms of, is there some sort of weighted ECPV sort of thing? So in how do we kind of proportion an element of, or a weighted score to each level of engagement through that journey, so that we can give it the proper or due kind of success metric or whatever it might be. So it's a bit of a journey at the minute, but certainly that's where I'm kind of focused right now.
Susan, what's the one metric you want or struggle with most?
Yeah, we run a lot of brand lift studies with YouTube as well. So, for us, it's definitely purchase intent. So, that sort of really lower funnel, a lot of time when you run a BLS with YouTube, you don't see an uplift. And it's a very hard metric to move, I know. But, yeah, I would say that consideration as well, yeah. But
I'm just going back and putting the Slido thing on stage. Oh, it's way back. Don't worry. Susan, one for you. It's a bit pointed. So you mentioned TikTok in the UK. Is Ferrera still using TikTok to advertise?
We're not allowed. We haven't been able to use TikTok. We're exploring the use of TikTok and Snapchat purely for the brand safety aspect of it, and its significant audience that they assure us is sort of young, as not under 13. But there's still sort of the measurement piece. So I sit home and my son is watching YouTube and he's served a Be Ready ad, Nutella Be Ready, and I'm like, well, you shouldn't be served that. Why are you being served that? We've got exclusion lists, we've got all this, so it's quite frustrating. And I think, I understand, device IDs, it's very hard to determine, but we have to be very, very careful in that, because it just takes one complaint to start a review. So, if that's the case, then, we're very strict guidelines with that.
Okay. One last one for you before we let you go and listen to the rest of the event. Digital out of home as a part of your screen strategy, do you consider that completely separately, or do you think about that in the video space? Does anyone want to take that one?
We do a lot of large format and sort of roadside out of home, so I think about that completely separately. But I think there has been a push to think about our sort of retail out of home, for example, as video and not as out of home. And I think that's a journey that we've been partnering closely with our creative teams and the rest of the marketing team on, is getting them to think about it differently. I think from a measurement perspective, it's not there yet, but from a creative point of view is sort of changing that mindset of sort of where it sits within the media mix to more video and less out of home.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of what we're planning for FY24. As I say, in terms of like pulling through that story from top to bottom, it's important that we capture that awareness through digital out of home, as well as other sort of what might be regarded as traditional above the line channels, which have become more programmatically bought these days. We're finding that there's more inventory available there. You can target better with each day that passes, it seems. We're currently exploring the opportunities in that space.
Yeah, for us, it's always been quite a siloed view, but I think that's definitely changing with programmatic digital out of home space. It's something that we will explore a lot more, in this next couple of years. And definitely the measurement piece is quite interesting for us, cross media measurement as well for it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Get the audience to thank our wonderful panellists.